Welcome to In the Workshop, part 1 of a Diabolical model steam engine in the worst mechanical condition that I have ever seen. The engine was built many years ago and I think there is something slightly wrong with it. Normally, when asked to repair engines that look anything like this, I would turn the job down immediately because the cost of repair is far in excess of the value of the repaired engine. In this case, I am going to make an exception to the rule because this particular engine belongs to a friend of mine. His name is James Evans and he has a YouTube channel called T's Cottage Guy. He lives in Darlington in the northeast of England and is only 16 years old, so he doesn't drive. Either his mother or father bring him down to see me. I really enjoy his company. His enthusiasm and hyperactivity are quite interesting. I think I'll let James introduce himself rather than me just talk about him. Here he is, screwdriver in hand, removing the cylinder cover from this hideous steam engine that he brought down to see if I could fix. The sound is different because it's live in the workshop. I asked him, what is this T's Cottage pumping station that you work at?
T's Cottage is a Victorian pumping station based in Darlington.
Then I asked him where he got the engine from, the one that I'm looking at on the bench.
Well, this rust bucket was given to me by a friend of one of the volunteers at the pumping station. I don't know an awful lot about it, except that it was made by students at Barnard Castle School, which is in Teesdale, England. It is an apprentice piece, and you can tell, and maybe it's because of how shocking this engine is, maybe that's why metalworking is no longer taught in schools.
A very valid point. Most of the people I know now who are around 14, 15, 16 years of age, including my 2 older grandchildren, have no mechanical aptitude whatsoever. Pretty much like, I suppose, the people who built this engine. It is truly horrific in every way, and really I'm glad that he brought it down because I'm going to fix it and make it run. And I can see that this is not going to be an easy job for a couple of reasons. The engine is very badly made and also it's broken. I'm going to use a system of repair that I use frequently. I'm actually going to repair the engine, as you see it here, and put it back on the baseboard using some of the original wood screws and some different fixings. But once it's all finished, I'm going to dismantle it and mount it properly to the baseboard using bolts. There is no quick fix for this engine. The more I look at it, the more problems I can see. Here I've unscrewed 2 bolts which hold the plumber block that supports the outer edge of the flywheel onto the baseboard. The holes in the baseboard were very badly worn. Obviously this engine's been dismantled a lot. So now here's a regular feature of my episodes, top tip time. The holes in the baseboard are far too big for the screws, and the screws just push into the holes and don't grip. This is a piece of dowel and I thinned out one end of it so I could get the depth of the hole. I marked the piece of dowel using a felt tip pen, and this gave me the depth that I needed to fill the hole, which for this particular hole was 1/2 inch. The next job is to dip the thin end of the dowel into this bottle of woodworking adhesive. This popular woodworking adhesive is of course the PVA type. I pour quite a lot of it into the hole using the thin end of the dowel. Then I trim a 1/2 inch piece of the other end of the dowel using a Stanley knife, which is then simply tapped into the hole, using a piece of brass rod to keep the hammer away from the mechanical parts of the engine. After this was done, I repeated the procedure in an identical manner for the other side. As I've previously mentioned, this is not the final fix. With the dowel in place, the first problem that I had was the wood screw would not screw into the piece of dowel, even though at this stage I had actually drilled a pilot hole in the dowel. I didn't show that. This, however, was a quick fix. I used my 1-inch belt sander to put a point back on the wood screw, and then it screwed in place perfectly. I would like to say at this point, and I've said it many times before, whenever you're building or rebuilding an engine, start with the crankshaft, because if you don't get this right, nothing else that follows will be right. The next part of this video is a bit of a puzzle to me. As you can see, the right-hand bolt is definitely not the original. The left-hand one is, and that screws all the way in. I don't have a thread gauge or anything like that, but it's sort of a cross between 5BA and M3. This is a 4BA bolt and it's miles too big. The thread pitch actually does match 5BA, and the holes in the end cap suit 5BA bolts, so I'm going to rethread the mounting 5BA, and then that's the job done. Here I'm doing that and I'm being careful. It's actually quite tight, it's not a slack fit in the hole. I use the usual tapping method of 2 turns in very carefully and half a turn back to clear the chips. I didn't do it at this speed though, the video is currently running at 200%. After threading the holes, I fitted 2 cheesehead type 5BA bolts. When I complete this rebuild, I'll try and get some 5BA dome head bolts to make it all match. Although really, there is already a hodgepodge of different bolts on the engine, and these are the originals. I'm working on the other side of the bearings now, and I'm having to use a needle file to slightly enlarge the hole in the top cap. Then, in exactly the same way as previously shown, I rethreaded the main blocks and fitted this main bearing cap with a pair of 5BA cheesehead bolts in steel. Any parts that are removed from this engine I'm putting in a red plastic box, and I will perform a post-mortem on them just to find out what the original threads were. At the end of this video, I'll be showing a clip of a beam engine that I restored quite a few years ago. This was very old indeed, and every one of the bolts was completely handmade. None of the fittings was standard in any way. As you can see here, the engine really is in a bit of a state. Both of the crosshead guides are soft soldered to the motion bracket, and both of the crosshead guides have broken away from the bracket. There's a reason for this, and here it is. Looking at the engine, I can immediately see what the problem is. The end of the stuffing gland on the steam chest is fitted the wrong way round. So as you rotate the crankshaft, the valve fork on the valve rod collides with the stuffing gland, and that's what's broken the motion bracket. The arrow shows where the problem is. I think if I turn this round, then it should be a bit of an improvement. As I start to look at this engine in detail, I'm sure I will find more horrific things. Once upon a time, a man brought this to me for repair. It was in pieces and in very bad condition with bits missing. I asked the man where he got it from, and he said, "You're really not going to believe this. It was by my neighbour's bin. He threw it out." He then said he asked the neighbour if he could have it, and the neighbour said yes, with pleasure. Then he brought it to me and asked if I could repair it, and I gave him a price and got on with the job. If you look carefully, you'll see the new parts, the main bearing for the beam. Some of the Watt's parallel motion was missing. I had to remake the parts. And the top of the cylinder was a complete mess. Someone had drilled out the top and used really large bolts. I made some stepped studs to take smaller bolts, and the job was very successful. I'm confident that I can repair this engine to the same standard. We shall see. My friend James is also making a video today about his visit. I hope he didn't video me personally because I'm not very photogenic. I've added this photograph to prove the point. That's it for the first part of what should be quite an interesting and challenging series. Stay safe, stay healthy, thanks for watching, and I hope you found it useful. Please take the time to visit my Mainsteam Models website and click on the section of the website that says Video Playlists. And by doing that, you can find other videos that you may like to watch. And by using the playlists, you can actually watch the videos back to back.